Welcome everyone to our fifth session as part of the AR workshop. Today's topic is all about enhancing your AR experiences with audio, with a specific focus on Garageband and making use of voice memos. Now, I want to preface this by just highlighting the fact that this is not a Garageband training. This is not going to be a session where you're going to learn how to compose different pieces of music. I'm just going to show you some of the features that I like to make use of when I'm incorporating audio directly into an AR experience. So just want to preface it by that. Also, this has been a way for me to really learn a bit more about GarageBand because I'm not naturally musical in that way, but have found it to be a great learning opportunity to combine something that I'm not terribly familiar with or terribly comfortable with into something that I am very passionate about, which is augmented reality. So that is our session today. If this is your first time joining, please do introduce yourself in the chat, your name and where you are joining us from. My name is Lindsay Stutter. I'm a digital teaching and learning specialist for the ACS International Schools here in the UK, and I am an Apple Distinguished Educator. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining us from today. This course is being run by the ACS International Regional Training Center. We are a relatively new regional training center just this year. If you want to follow us on Twitter at ACSRTC is our handle, or myself at LindsDive85, and you can contact us. You should have received an email from me already about today's session, but the email is acsinternationalrtc@gmail.com. I do want to include just one little tidbit here. We will be starting up the 25 Days of AR Challenge in the month of December. This kicks off on December 1st and goes all the way through to December 25th. This is the third year that I've done this, so I really hope that after attending these types of sessions, you'll be interested in giving it a go. It is done entirely on Twitter, and we do get lots of people involved. So do make sure to follow along with me and look out for that. More information coming up on that challenge in the next couple of weeks. So again, going over what we're going to talk about today is we're going to do a recap from session number 4, and then we're going to get to be hands-on with creating something in Reality Composer that we can then attach audio to. And then we will close up our session after the hands-on exploration. Again, this is a 6-week course aimed at improving your understanding of AR in education, with the idea of how to maximize content creation within iPad for your AR experiences that you create. It is a progression, so each workshop builds upon the previous with the different skill sets, so that at the end you walk away with a new skill set of how to combine your content creations and lots of different applications to end up with these AR experiences. And this is session number 5, enhancing AR with audio with a specific focus on voice memos and the use of GarageBand. So you can see we're almost to the end. For those that have joined in every session, well done. We are nearly to the finish of it all. But let's dive right in now to AR with audio. So for this session, as you've got an email, you need your iPad, you need the app Reality Composer, GarageBand, and voice memos. Additionally, we're provided with a workbook that is a pages file to document everything that you are learning about during these types of sessions. So you do need that as well today. The key learning outcomes for this session are, number 1, to learn about making recordings in voice memo and GarageBand to be able to bring into your AR experiences. Number 2 is attaching your behaviors to objects for audio. So I'll talk a bit more about that, but there are 3 main ways that we would attach an audio directly into our AR projects that we create. And then we didn't get to talk too much about this in session number 4, but I wanted to bring it up again for this session, which is how to manage your files for sharing with students. Yeah. So discussion. I always like to start it off with a question. How do you think audio plays a part in augmented reality? So if you think about all the different ways that we interact with our students, how would audio tie into how we could support the learning process that's going to happen when a student is in an AR experience? So I'll give you about 30 seconds, pop something in the chat. I would love to see what you come up with. So some things to think about are directions. When we give directions to students, is that audio? When we have some music playing in the classroom to help them focus, that audio? Using different languages, is that included in audio? Great, yep, reinforcing instructions. That's a good suggestion. Sound effects for a more realistic experience. Absolutely, Kara. All those are great ideas going forward, but definitely being able to reach our learners in lots of different ways through various types of audio is really key when working in AR. And it also gives you a lot of flexibility to play around and be creative. So recapping and reflecting from our 4th session, where we really started to go into the fundamentals of Reality Composer. And we talked about a lot of different ways that we can work with the products and things that we'd already made in 2D and 3D and how to bring those in to our Reality Composer projects. We talked a bit about how to format something, a piece of content once it's in there, how to resize and rotate our assets, and definitely being able to do things like drag and drop from other apps such as Photos or from our Keynote projects that we make. So again, in what ways have you been able to use Reality Composer? Whether you're brand new this week and you've just started playing around with it, or you attended our session number 4, in what ways have you started to bring Reality Composer into your classroom? Go ahead and pop that down in the chat, because it's always great to hear what educators are trying in their classroom and new ways that we can learn from each other. Most recently, at our school, we had a teacher create a 3D model of her classroom using photographs and using 3D objects, and she had her students complete a mathematics challenge, walking outside with their iPads, but within the realms of Reality Composer, which was really quite fun. And the feedback from students was really, really important and really powerful, of understanding where they were going in the experience and what they were taking away from it. So that was something that we really liked. Making an entry point into space and an escape room for my teachers, fantastic. I really love when I hear that other people get into making the escape rooms as well. So any other suggestions, please do pop those down in the chat. It's always handy, and something might just come to your mind as we carry on. But please do make use of that chat. So our workbook is going to be about session 5 today, enhancing that AR with audio. So again, make use of that space. Any key takeaways that you want to jot down? Oh, I'm not sure why that has come through. What connections can you make to your curriculum? How will you prepare students to use voice memos and Garageband when it comes to Reality Composer? Whether you're using it or whether you're starting to get your students to design and explore with it. And then thinking again about what we talked about initially, what ways can we use those types of tools with audio to provide more access for our students? Do also include any samples after the session that you create, whether it's screenshots or screen recordings. And let's talk now about enhanced AR experiences. So I have just a few.
Patrick, call Basil.
I have a few examples here to share with you. I'm really hoping the audio is going to work. So please let me know if you don't end up hearing anything. But literacy, this was created to support our early childhood students. And the idea is that when they're walking around and exploring all the different letters, they can tap on one. It takes them to a different scene in Reality Composer. And there are objects in there that begin with that letter sound. So they can tap on that letter, they can tap on that object, hear the sound, hear the name.
Cookies.
There we go. Hear the name of the item, and then the sound repeated again. And they can go back and forth as many times as they want to. I do know there's a little bit of a delay with that video playing accurately, but hopefully you are hearing it okay. And then students can tap on the home button, jump back to the main screen, and then go into a different scene with a different letter sound and some different objects in there as well. And again, this is all teacher made, all with things that they might be talking about in the classroom to support literacy and language development.
Bread.
So even our little ones can make use of it. Another example with early childhood was to support an inquiry about imagination, and we had the Polar Express come to the school for the children to hear and see. And if you can hear, there is the conductor calling out to the children and the sound of the train as it rolls up into our courtyard. And there we go. The closer that we end up getting to the train, the louder that sound becomes. So that was really quite exciting, especially to round off a unit on imagination of having this full-size steam train show up in the courtyard. Last example was for a novel study, and this was to study the book The K with sort of 4th to 5th grade age students, that they had to go around this desert island, look for different clues and answer questions, all while there is this really wonderful, fun theme, tropical feel in the background that one of my amazing ADEs composed for me. Additionally, there are sound effects when you get close to particular objects that will be triggered and will start to play. So there's several different ways that you can incorporate audio into your AR scenes. It can be through sound effects, it can be through your own voice layered as description or instructions, it can be background music, it could be when you get close to something, it gets triggered that some sort of sound is playing. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be easily incorporated that doesn't require too much sort of heavy lifting, if you will. But this was a really fun one for our students. And I think as Cara had mentioned, it really does help to enhance the experience and really make the students feel immersed wherever they are meant to be exploring and bring it to life. So let's talk a bit about how do we do these types of things when we're building with Reality Composer. So there are some workflows, and it makes more sense when I'm going to demonstrate it, but just to give you an idea. I like to use voice memos for making audio recordings such as instructions or descriptions. So when I need to record my voice, giving something specific like that, I don't tend to do it in Garageband. I tend to do it in voice memos just because it's much easier. And I know that all I am going to be recording is myself speaking. And so voice memos is really a fantastic tool for that. Also to name those types of audio files and organize them and then save them from voice memos to my files folder that I can then use in my creations later. It's also really handy to take your iPad outside and to record any type of ambient sounds. So maybe you're just going out into a forest area and you're listening to the leaves crackling or the wind blowing, or there's birds that are chirping around you. So voice memos is really quite good for that as well, especially if you just want a very basic audio file. I really like voice memos to be able to facilitate that. Additionally, you can just pop a simple microphone, plug that into your iPad, take that outside and pick up specific sounds as well. Maybe get close to water, put a microphone down right next to the water, and you can hear sort of that babbling brook going through, which is great. Now, Garageband is going to be for your more comprehensive creations, such as making soundtracks or background music for your experience. So the one from the desert island, I believe that was a combination of a live ukulele recording that was done by my ADE colleague, Ewan Hughes, as well as incorporating some of the live loops and different instruments from GarageBand to compose that piece of music that you heard. So that is where I would draw the distinction between when and for what reason I would use those particular types of tools. Now, we talked briefly about this in our previous session when we were looking at Reality Composer. And behaviors is just another way of saying the action or the animation of something occurring. And when you are going to attach a behavior to something in your scene, you need to tell it how it's going to start. So when I, as a user, am going around an AR experience, how am I going to trigger a behavior to occur? Is it going to be by me tapping on certain things and getting the action to then occur? Is something going to start hidden and then after a few seconds it will then appear? Is it going to be something that I get close to it and then some sort of jiggling action or movement is going to occur? Or can I have more custom control? Now, when it comes to starting a behavior, the two that I tend to go to are either tap and play a sound, meaning I have a piece of content in my Reality Composer scene, and when I tap on it, a sound is going to play, or else to customize it. And I do a lot with custom behaviors, not just for audio, but for lots of different things as well. So that is how you would then sort of trigger something to happen. But when the trigger has occurred, what is going to happen? And you have three main options when it comes to sound. So you can either have, when I've done this, a sound is going to play. You can have ambience, just sort of playing constantly in the background. And that's good if you've only got one scene in your Reality Composer file. But if you have multiple scenes, which is probably going to be a little bit beyond where we're going at this point. But if you're having multiple scenes, you can have music that will play across all of those. So the main ones that I tend to use are either playing a sound or playing ambience. And those are either going to be a specific sound attached to something that's in my scene, or when the scene starts, that there's just this lovely music ambience in the background. But it's important to know the distinction. So ambience says play audio anchored to the scene, whereas music is the whole experience. And that could be if you have multiple scenes that you're creating. So it's really important to understand this distinction between those two. So now we're going to go off and go into our Reality Composer and do a little bit of a try. Sorry, my lights keep turning off in here. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Reality Composer. And I've put together just a little sample to show you what I was talking about in our email about bringing in things about yourself. So what I have done is create just a basic scene, almost like I'm in a room, with information about me. And this would be something I might send to my students as an AR file that they can then go off and explore. So if I go ahead now and bring that into AR, and scan around, there is my file. I'm going to make it quite big so that I can essentially walk through it. And I have added some different audio into this just to give you an idea. So when I press play, there should be some music that will start to play in the background. Now, if I tap on my favorite place on earth, you should start to hear some beaches in the background. Additionally, I can come up to the birds, and just by tapping on them, there we go, we can get some different sounds. And again, just did this as a combination of different pieces of information about me for my students. Everything made entirely on the iPad with either Keynote, photos, maps, utilizing the drawing tools, and then with voice memos and Garageband. So I hope that there wasn't a terrible delay and that you were able to hear the different sounds. So I'm going to show you how I've gone ahead and attached those sounds and then we'll have a little play with voice memos and Garageband. So this might be something I might send to students sort of that first couple of weeks of school to get to know me a little bit more. They can walk around, they can explore, they can see different places that I've lived, learn a little bit about me. There's my family, some of my favorite things. But what they don't know is that I've hidden that audio in there for them. So when we're doing behaviors, any type of behaviors, not just audio, we're going to use this option here. And on the left-hand side, you'll probably not see anything until you add something in new. But what you can see here are certain behaviors that I've attached to different content in the scene. So for example, the oceans. Got stuck there. In the oceans, I've done this as a custom, which has been to tap. So if I do this again, you can see this tap and flip, tap and play a sound, tap and add force. I think for this one, I did tap and play a sound. And it's going to ask you to choose the affected object. That means which object are we attaching this particular sound to? And for this example, it's been my favorite place in the world, which is Trunk Bay in St. John in the Caribbean. So I've tapped on that picture. And you can see it will go green once it's been selected. You can tap done. And then on this side, it wants to know the action sequence. So those are those actions again that we explored in the presentation previously. And I just scroll down to where it says play sound. And that's where you can see it's right there. And it wants to know, okay, well, which object is it? Again, it's going to be this one. That's why it's gone green in the scene to know that it's been selected. And then it wants to know, well, what kind of sound are we going to attach to this particular object? Now, the nice thing with Reality Composer is there are some sound effects for you to choose from. So I've gone in and just picked some ambience ones. You might have to download them ahead of time. But otherwise, I mean, I've been using this for quite a long time, so I've got quite a bit to choose from. But you can see there's different categories, all different types of sounds. There's quite a lot. And then there's different noises as well. So it really does pull in some of the idea of the different sound effects that you can get in the loops and GarageBand as well. But for this one, I just wanted more of an ambience. So it happens to be that was one of the top ones, and I just chose the ocean one. Hopefully you can hear it's playing there. And then you can preview it. So when I tap on the play, I've told Reality Composer that when the object is tapped, it should play a sound. So if you're familiar with coding, if and then, it's the same type of thing. If I tap on the picture, then the sound will play. And now the fun thing as well is when you get quite far away from the item, the sound will get quieter and quieter. But when you get up close to it, then it should get quite loud as well. And again, you can adjust that volume depending how loud you want that sound to be. And you can loop it as well. So if I don't loop it, it's going to play for just the 12 seconds of the length of that sound effect. But if I loop it, it's just going to keep playing for a longer period of time until I tell it to stop. Okay, so that's how I did adding a sound from the content library within Reality Composer, but that's the same approach for attaching a sound to a particular item. Now I have my birds up here, these little hummingbirds as a 3D object. I've got two behaviors attached to them. One is that they're just going to spin around. So we can see there they are just rotating on their own. And they will rotate for about 1 minute and 11 seconds, and they should do 10 full rotations. And I've told Reality Composer, I've put it so that when the scene starts, when I'm viewing this in AR and when I press play, that those birds will start spinning right when I've pressed play. So anything that you set as a trigger to have the scene start, that behavior or that animation or that action will happen when you press play. The other one that I've done for the birds, because you can have multiple behaviors, is the birds talking. And I've done this again with the tap. So when I tap on the birds, when the scene is in AR and when it's playing, then it should play a particular sound. And there is no sound for hummingbirds, so I've just put a macaw in, and you can hear. There we go. Now, some sounds you don't want to have on a loop because I think it would be really irritating. You may not want to hear that over and over and over again on a loop. So that one is okay to just be one at a time. Now, the last thing that I've done is when I pressed play, you should hear it. There was that background music playing. So I didn't get a chance to name that one. I'll go ahead and name that one now. And again, I've said when my scene starts, so when I press play up here, I want this music to play in the background. And that is the action that I've done here, which is, again, scroll down. And because I wanted over the whole experience, play music. And all you have to do is come in and say, how high do you want that volume to be? If you want it just sort of low in the background, that's quite good. You can come in, pick anything that's in here, or import your own. And you can see I have this as an AR sample song. So I've just imported it from my files. Got a lot of stuff here. And then it's set to play for 14 seconds. But again, I've got it set to loop. So before I go any further, because I know this is a lot to take in at once, are there any questions regarding anything that I have just covered regarding the behaviors, how to trigger them to start, making the sounds, the music, anything like that? Or if you're okay, you can just give me a thumbs up and we'll just carry on. Okay, so Catherine, you're okay? Have I lost everyone? Okay, Lindsay's okay, Kara's okay. Fantastic. So the next thing I wanted to do is talk about when you're creating your music or you're creating your sounds, how to get them from where you've made them to be available for Reality Composer. And that's a really big one, is how do I actually do that process? So you've seen that I can go in and find them, but we need to make sure that we know how to get there, how they can be available to us. So I'm going to go first into voice memos. And you can see I use it quite a lot for different types of things. I've got songs that have been brought in from other places. I've got lots of different types of music. I've got comments from students in here.
Kids who couldn't learn during the lockdown because they didn't have internet is an example.
Okay. So recording in voice memos is really quite straightforward. You have your collection here of all your recordings on the side, and you have sort of the preview and the editing space for your voice memo over here. But down here, you have your big red record button. So if I tap on that, oh, apparently I can't do that while having the Zoom on, but you could go ahead and press that and it will go ahead. You can probably do it if you're working on your iPad separately, and it would start to then record. What it will also do is automatically name the file for you. Typically, I've seen it where it's picking up your location. So you may want to get in the habit of just renaming those types of files so that you don't end up with just locations, but making sure that they have a particular name. And you can go ahead and just do that by tapping on them and editing them. So it's really straightforward. So we'll say, okay, I'll go to my AR sample song here, which we've already had a listen to in the project. And I need to get it somewhere that I can access it from Reality Composer. And I like to organize all of my files for AR directly in the Files app. And it means that I have a go-to place every time that I'm bringing content in, whether it's audio, whether it's 3D designs from Tinkercad. I've got those files all organized in one easy to access place. So that's how I'm going to show you how to do it here. So say I've got my file, I've done my recording, and I'm ready to get that into my file. So we go to the share option, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says save to files. Now, if you're organizing these elsewhere, maybe you use Drive, maybe you use OneDrive, it's completely up to you. But I always like to save to files. And because I've done this so much, I've actually made a voice memos folder directly in my files. And that's my go-to place for those types of things. So anything that I make in voice memos is going to be saved directly there. So we tap save. Yeah, I've already got one in there. That's fine. And now that is sitting in my files, ready for me when I need it. I think it's in my iCloud drive. And so there you can see, there are my little files that I have created, all right there to be used with different projects. Okay, so that is voice memos. It's very straightforward. It's very easy to use, only a few steps, and you've got your audio created. Now, the trickier one is Garageband. So in Garageband, if you're not a music confident person like me, I like to come in and use the live loops. And the reason is you don't have to have a huge creation in terms of length for an audio file when you're incorporating it into Reality Composer, because you have that looping option directly in Reality Composer. So you can make something that's only about sort of 10 to 20 seconds length, and then you just have it loop over and over again in Reality Composer. So that's really quite handy, especially for file size.
During our session today, we were unable to do a live demonstration of creating background music in Garageband to then be utilized in something like Reality Composer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now at this time. So first we would open up Garageband and create a new song. And what we want to do is make use of the live loops feature, so that you can have pieces of music that are already put together and timed, and that you can make use of those to have as background music for your Reality Composer AR experiences. So there's several to choose from, obviously based on what you've downloaded, what you have access to. Because we're going to create a background piece of music, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Flex and Flow option. Now, once in there, everything is already timed and matched for you. So you have quite a few options to choose from, and we'll take a listen to a few of those now. Or something like this. And so it's fairly straightforward to record one of these pieces. I'm going to go back to the beginning, select one of my collections of loops. In this case, I'm going to go for this option here. And I'm going to tap the record option, making sure the metronome up here is off. And once I press the record, I'm going to tap on the arrow here to trigger all of these to play and record at the same time. Okay, and so now I have a loop that I can now come in and take a look at. I will do some editing later on, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to take your recording that you've made from the live loops, export it, and then be able to bring it into Reality Composer. So I'm going back to the main option here. I'm going to do a long hold and just rename this file as sample AR audio. And that's fine for me. Now I want to be able to have this in the same place as my voice memos that I would use. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my files now. So tapping on select, tapping on the file, and clicking on share. I want to make sure it's as a song. It doesn't have to be any higher than it is right here, just because it's going to be set as background music. And I want to make sure that that goes into my voice memos, as I said before. And this will just ensure that all my audio files are then collated. I can listen to them at the same time, all organized in one place, and this will end up in my voice memos folder within files, as that is my workflow for how I organize myself. So if I jump in now to my voice memos, I can see there is that file. I can listen to it again, trim it down as needed. And then I will tap on the share button, and that's going to go to save to files. And as we saw earlier in our workshop, everything I make goes into my voice memos, so I'm going to save it there. Now when you're in your Reality Composer project, so I'll go back into the one we were looking at earlier. If I want to add that background music in, I go to our behaviors, and I would bring in a new behavior. So clicking on the plus, custom, I want it to be when the scene starts. So whenever a user who's looking at this file presses play, that's going to trigger when the scene starts. And the action sequence then is play music. You can adjust the volume as needed. And you'll notice I've got sort of this caution warning label here, and that is because at the moment there's no audio clip selected. So tap on choose. And again, I'm going to go to import, and this is where it will find my most recent file that I was working out of, but for you, you may have to go and find the file that you saved it in. So I've got my sample AR audio. I'm going to tap on that, and I'm happy with that. So whenever I press play in my scene, whether I'm viewing in AR or not, I should hear that piece of music that was made in Garageband using live loops start playing.
Within voice memos, I can then come back and have a listen to those songs. So for example, this was made in Garageband as an audio file. But I found that having it within voice memos, it's just a better workflow for me. You might feel more comfortable exporting directly from Garageband, but I found that having it in my recordings, it then all collates it into one place for me. So I know everything to do with audio is going to be in my voice memos that I can go back to and access easily. And again, that's just my choice because I'm not a confident Garageband user. So I think I may have another song in here. Let me see. So again, this would be a series of live loops that I've recorded in Garageband, saved as a song, and then shared to my voice memos to be able to be used in a Reality Composer file as needed. So again, that process is going to be exactly the same, whether it's made in GarageBand or whether it's made in Voice Memos. Whatever's in Voice Memos is going to end up in that Voice Memos folder that I've made in files. And that is just my workflow. So I know that I have all my audio in one place. So I'm sorry I didn't get to share the GarageBand option. I'm really sad that hasn't worked out, but we'll just roll with the punches, as it were. So if we go back into our Reality Composer, again, anything that you can click on, so for example, these little objects, you can attach an audio file to. And I think it's really quite powerful, especially if you're getting into doing things like escape rooms or making those immersive experiences for your students, to have your voice in there. It just takes it to that next level. So it's not just, I'm detaching from you and I'm letting you go off and explore this, and I'm not involved in that process, but actually, hey, I've layered my voice into this. I've given you instructions in this. And for doing this type of project where it's a sort of meet the teacher, this is me, it's really straightforward on how to build it. Those skills that we've been working on for the past 4 weeks, it's all culminating together. So you've got your 3D files from Tinkercad, you've got your photography, you've got your memojis and your Keynote clip art shapes. We're bringing in photographs from maps. You've got your drawing features. All of that is that content creation, but you're putting your ownership on it. You're putting your voice behind it, and then quite literally putting your voice into it when you're able to add in those types of behaviors in that way. So are there any questions about what I've just discussed? Really, it's fairly straightforward what I do, which is just recording a series of live loops that I like, exporting as a song and bringing into Voice Memos so that I can rename it and make sure that it's how I want it. And then it's all stored in my files in that way. So any questions, or give a thumbs up if you're okay, and I will move on to file sharing. Perfect. Lovely. Okay. So again, everyone has their own ways of working, and I've been working with augmented reality for just about 2 years now. So the things that work for me are based on my exploration, are based on my trials and errors. And then obviously talking with other amazing AR experts such as Paul Hamilton. He's been a great source of inspiration for me, and I'm sure countless others. But what I'm talking about is how it's worked for me. So one of the things that we've managed to do with Reality Composer is collaboration. Now, this has helped us tremendously during the lockdowns that we've had. And I'll just see if I can bring up one of our examples here. This one might be too big for me to open, but we'll see. I might try and get another one to open. Our 5th grade students did an end of year exhibition at the end of this last academic year. And normally this is a face-to-face experience where we bring parents in, every student has a desk or a table, they set up their sort of cross-curricular research project and they present their findings to all the parents. But we couldn't do that because we weren't allowed to have parents on campus owing to social distancing. So what we decided to do was to build essentially a virtual exhibition hall, if you will. And this was then a place that we brought all of our content from the cross-curricular research project into. And one of the amazing things about this was not only the learning that occurred for the staff and the students, but all the different ways that students were creating their content. So we were able to bring in keynote photographs for the presentation. We were able to bring in audio files of students speaking through Voice Memos. We were able to bring in emoji characters that the children had designed in Keynote. We were able to bring in poplets. It was absolutely amazing in terms of all the different ways that students were creating their content and then compiling it. But one of the main things that was really powerful was it wasn't just a video of the students. It wasn't just a presentation. We actually created this augmented reality hall. and managed to put our students in it and attach their voices to it. So you might have seen this video. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen this example. We've got our teachers, their Bitmoji characters outside, and then inside we have our students. Now, one of the wonderful things you might notice is that we have a microphone. And every student, I'm talking 81 students here, managed to get a 1-minute audio recording that when you tap on that microphone when it's playing, you can hear them speaking about their project. Now, this was really sort of next level use of augmented reality, because what we did was myself and my co-conspirator, I like to call her, worked on these projects through collaboration. So because we have managed Apple IDs, we were able to invite each other to work on these projects through the Reality Composer. So if you've ever collaborated on a Keynote file or a Pages or a Numbers file, or you've ever collaborated in Notes, it's the same type of thing. You do the same type of process, but for a Reality Composer file. And that's really very, very powerful when you're starting to then collaborate in these types of experiences, because it does take a lot of work, having to do resizing and formatting and bringing in, a lot of content, and for 81 students. So every student's having so much stuff. So the fact that we could collaborate through our managed Apple IDs in Reality Composer was really next level. So that's an amazing thing when it comes to Reality Composer, is that you can do that type of collaboration. But the main thing we wanted to do was to find a way to share this type of file to our parents. And so what we did is we put shared notes together. We invited all the students in the 5th grade, so 81 students, to have view access on this shared note through their managed Apple ID. And we put all of these Reality Composer files in that shared note. And that way they could launch it on their iPad. If they made a mistake or something got deleted by accident, they could go back and reload it again. And the parents could then walk around and experience this type of exhibition and hear all these voices as they were going around and exploring. So that behavior that we looked at before of tap and play sound, that is what the parents would essentially do as they were walking around this exhibition. So they press play at the top, and then they go up to one of the little students here and tap on their microphone. And you would then hear that student speaking about their exhibition. So imagine that for 81 times, and you can go as many times as you want to around these exhibition halls. Because of the amount of content we put into these, and because of the intricate designs and the complexity of it all, we ended up not doing one file because it just became so huge with all the media attached to it. But we ended up creating 7. So each of the different classes got a room based on their theme and their color. And that is what they ended up looking like. So this shared note that we compiled had the instructions for parents, had the links for the students, had the Reality Composer projects, and then had a YouTube video on how to do it, how it would work. And the students took their iPads home. They could access this through the shared note and through collaboration. Parents could then walk around this exhibition. So that is another way of incorporating not only audio to enhance an experience, it was lending that student voice and that ownership back to as close as an in-person experience as you could get, but also the fact that we could collaborate on this type of file together. Myself and my co-conspirator was really very great. So I just wanted to show real quick, if you are interested in doing any kind of collaboration, if you've got the managed Apple IDs as part of your school, or if your school has invested in some form of personal Apple IDs that you're allowed to do collaboration with, here's how we would do that. So when you're looking at all your Reality Composer files, we'd go to Select, we would tap on the project, and we'd go down to Share. And you'd need to put that in iCloud. And once it's in iCloud, you can then go ahead and invite different users who have the same type of Apple ID, whether it's personal to personal or managed to managed. You can then go ahead and collaborate directly on those Reality Composer projects. And so that brings us just to sort of the close of our session. So thinking about the different things that I've given you today, which I know has been a lot, there is a lot that I've thrown at you in such a short space of time. In what ways could you begin to apply what you've learned? So whether it's, that's a new way of using voice memos that I didn't think about to record verbal instructions. Even if it's not to put it into AR, maybe I could, layer things into different files and I've just got all my directions easily saved right there. Maybe it's learning how to go outside and record different sounds to then bring into your AR experience as a sound effect or as a different type of ambience or background that you can include. Maybe it's bringing your Garageband live loops projects and saving those into voice memos to then layer into your AR experiences. So any way that you can think about starting to apply what you've learned, please do pop that in the chat and make a note of it in your workbook as well. Or if someone shares something that you think might be quite handy to have a go with. But it really is sort of an underrated app, I think, in terms of its value. But voice memos is very, very powerful. Yeah, absolutely. The integration of GarageBand with Reality Composer. And I did want to bring in some examples from Everyone Can Create. I just ran out of time, unfortunately. But looking at some of those projects as a starting point for composing, especially with live loops, and then having that project to then put into your Reality Composer file is a really good workflow. So Voice Memo, it's a standard app on the iPad. I want to say it's iOS 13 or newer. I'm sure that Kara is going to tell me I'm wrong. My other ADE down there, but I believe it was from iOS 13 or newer that you could access that one. So Kara, if I'm wrong, you can correct me there. So again, just to keep track of those in your workbook here, any suggestions I've talked about. And then if you have learned something and you want to share about it, you can use the hashtag on Twitter, AppleRTC, or tag us at ACSRTC. I do love seeing what people end up walking away with and creating in their classes. And just to close, we're getting ready for session 6. So in 2 weeks' time, we will be finishing this 6-session workshop with sort of bringing everything together. So I hope that you can join in for that last session. I don't think it will be a full hour. I think it will probably be closer to half an hour or 45 minutes, but would just love to have you. If you've been with us since the beginning, please do scan the QR code to join in for that last session. And I'll just open it up now if anyone has any questions or comments. Otherwise, please do enjoy the rest of your day.